Joining us right now is Congressman James Comer, obviously the House Oversight Chairman, author of the new book, All the President's Money, Investigating the Secret Foreign Schemes That Made the Biden Family Rich. Congressman, thank you for taking the time. Let me just ask you a very simple question. How did Joe Biden get so rich?
Well, no one's ever been able to figure that out. What we were able to do is subpoena the bank records of his son and his brother. We found that they took in $27 million from bad people in bad countries, not for any business purpose, because the Bidens didn't own a real business. The only business that we could determine in our 1.5-year long investigation was they were selling access to Joe. There's a term for that. That's called lobbying, I guess you could say. But you're not supposed to have immediate family members that lobby, number one. Number two, if you lobby foreign entities, you're supposed to register as a foreign agent. There's a law called the Foreign Agents Registration Act. None of his family registered for that. What we found through our investigation was from the IRS whistleblowers that they never paid a penny of taxes on this $27 million. So $27 million coming in tax-free, that's a pretty good start to wealth.
So I suppose there will be no accountability for the enrichment of the Biden family as now we are in the last couple hours of their regime?
Well, we have criminal referrals to the Department of Justice for Hunter Biden committing perjury and for James Biden lying under oath in a deposition and a transcribed interview. Obviously, if Pam Bondi wants to take our investigation, she could pursue charges of money laundering. She could pursue charges of violation of Foreign Agents Registration Act. She could probably put together enough evidence for a RICO case. So the decision as to whether or not to pursue charges on the Biden family, that ball's going to be in the Trump administration's court. I certainly hope they do. I think Jim Jordan has said publicly he hopes they do. But at the very least, we want to see people held accountable in the federal government when what we call the deep state, the unelected deep state bureaucrats that were responsible for the cover-up. Because what we found in our investigation was that there were 4 government agencies that had ongoing investigations of various Biden family members. It was the Department of Justice in 3 different jurisdictions, the IRS, the FBI, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. And in each instance, while investigating either Jim Biden or Hunter Biden, obviously they wanted to question Joe Biden because none of the money would be coming into the accounts of the Bidens were it not for Joe, because they were selling access to Joe. Anyone with common sense knew that. So when it got to the point they wanted to speak to Joe Biden, like any investigation would do, they were told to stand down by unelected deep state bureaucrats. We have names of those individuals, and we've just very recently passed them on to who will be the Trump appointees in the new law enforcement agencies.
So Chairman Comer, you also met recently with Kash Patel, presumably the next FBI director. Tell us, what did you guys discuss?
Well, we discussed a lot. We talked about how big a mess he's inherited, how he's inheriting an agency that was once a glorified government agency around the world, and now its reputation has been tarnished. I would argue diminished. And he's going to have to go in, and obviously he's going to get rid of all the political appointees. But the problem are the deep state bureaucrats, the unelected career employees that have been there forever. That's whose names kept popping up in my investigation. And he's going to have to get rid of those employees, even though they're protected by the civil service laws or merit or tenure or whatever you want to call it. So we talked about that. We named some names of some people that were responsible for the intelligence community, the 51 foreign former intelligence officials that signed the letter lying to the American people, committing election interference back in 2020 when they said that laptop was Russian disinformation. We knew from our investigation that the FBI already had possession of the laptop. The FBI knew months before that letter was issued, right before the 2020 election, that the laptop was real and that a multitude of financial crimes had been committed by the Biden family. So what we found throughout our investigation, and it's in my book, All the President's Money, is that the FBI, anytime we would find something out or we would have a high profile deposition, they would collude with the liberal left wing media and drop a story right at the moment, we would be swearing someone in either for a hearing or for a deposition. And all the mainstream media would focus on that. Half the time, what they did was absolutely false and would later be proven false, but they were controlling the media narrative. And the media narrative was there's no evidence. There's no evidence of Biden wrongdoing. No one would ever explain what the Bidens did for a living. They would say, oh, they're business associates. Well, what business? There is no business. They don't produce or manufacture a good or service. They don't do anything other than sell access to Joe. And it wasn't like they were selling access to big pharmaceutical companies or some type of special interest. They were selling access to people in foreign countries, and my book goes into detail, names and names of all the scoundrels who wired to Biden's money. They were all in trouble. In fact, just about every one of them either have been in prison, are currently in prison, are under investigation and could go to prison, or on the run from being sent to prison. I mean, these are the worst people in the world that needed prosecutors fired. They needed banks to be able to allow them to launder money from their country into the United States bank so their country wouldn't seize their assets. These are the worst people in the world. And ironically, when Christopher Wray, the disgraced former FBI director, gave his last interview on 60 Minutes earlier this week, he said the biggest threat to America is China. Then why didn't he do anything about the fact that the Bidens took $8 million from China? It wasn't from a Chinese company. I write about that in the book. It was from China. Tony Bobulinski testified in front of the American people and said it wasn't a legitimate business deal. It was a payment or a bribe from China. Christopher Wray knew this. He did nothing about it. And you've seen nothing but pro-China, China first, America last policies in this whole Biden administration.